This is an oral history interview with Sylvia Drapkin by Katie Belovich, conducted on March 12, 1987, at 29 Sheep Path, Oak Hill Park, Massachusetts. This interview is conducted as part of the Oral History Project of the Newton Free Library and Boston College. Best place to begin is to ask you when you moved to Oak Hill Park.
David and I moved here in August 1956 on the hottest day of the year. And after we moved in, it was very simple. All we moved in with was one bedroom set and no other furniture. We did have a broken down card table, which we used for our meals, and we sat on orange crates. Everything else were clothing, and we were very busy putting the dishes, which we also came with, and our clothing away.
So how did you hear of Oak Hill Park, and what made you decide to move here?
We came to Oak Hill Park to visit David's friend musician, Millard Niger, and his charming wife, Helen. And when we came to Oak Hill Park, when we visited them, we were very much impressed with their home. Their home was very nicely decorated in aqua and white. And it was so cool. You felt so cool and so clean that we were most impressed. We had been here in 1948 when the homes were being built, and we were not impressed at that time with the little boxes, the mud, and the fact that the interiors were painted with the dark yellows, dark browns, dark greens. We suffered from claustrophobia, and we swore never would we ever live in that area. But we changed our minds when we visited Millard and Helen.
So the community had changed considerably from when you first saw it until when you decided to move in. How has it changed since 1956 to now?
There are a great number of changes. The houses are no longer 5.5 rooms. The basic house was 5.5, was considered 5 rooms, but the 5th room was practically the size of a closet, and we couldn't wait to get rid of that little closet and enlarge our living room. The homes today are 2-storied homes, and they spread out so that the houses are 9 and 10-room houses. No longer are they the 4.5 or 5-room house.
What about any other things that have changed in the community itself, where you used to shop?
Originally, there was a little shopping center, and in the shopping center there was a drugstore, there was a grocery store, there was a cleaner, and the public library was also in the center. And there was a nice little service station. Gasoline was pumped all day, and your cars could be repaired in the area. These things are no longer there. What is there now is a cleaner and hairdresser and a varied other types of stores and a condominium.
Doesn't have a particular name.
It's still the center of Oak Hill Park. There is a community center that is called the Schumann Community Center, and that is where the residents of Oak Hill Park hold their meetings and have parties, things of that sort.
So is the Schumann Center where all the recreational activities take place? Okay.
Schumann Center is where the Oak Hill Park Association would have their functions, as well as the Oak Hill Park Leisure Group, which is made up of the senior citizens of Oak Hill Park, also have their functions.
Of which you are?
Of which
Chair.
I'm chairman. Yes.
How has the physical appearance of the community changed since you've been here?
When we first moved in, our little house was in the middle of a desert. There were no flowers, no bushes, burnt out grass, and that was about it. And we became very enthusiastic. We overplanted, and we also had a vegetable garden, and we planted bushes so that now we have a greenery and no longer the desert.
What about the function of the paths that run behind your house? How's that changed over the years?
Originally, the paths were made, your front door led right out into a path, which is a footpath, and it was originally designated as a spot that one would safely leave their children to play. There were no automobiles there, no any other interferences. However, children being children, they chose the roadways to play in rather than the safe paths.
Did people back then congregate together in their front yards? Was it a meeting point, a gathering?
Never used their front yards, unfortunately. There were roadway parties in the summertime, and people would have their parties in their backyard, and it would involve a whole roadway.
Do you remember anything about the community in the area, like the Bigelow Mansion or the Peabody House?
Yes. Where the Peabody House were concerned, that was used as a home or a school for the retarded. And as I understand it, there is now a condominium up there. That's about all that I do know about the Peabody home.
Oak Hill seems to have people who are very enthusiastic about the area. So would you see Oak Hill Park as having its own identity, and how much of it do you see as new? Do you see it as your own?
Oak Hill Park and the Oak Hill Park Association, there is a very warm and caring feeling about the residents of Oak Hill Park. There are approximately 650 families living in Oak Hill Park. It would appear that we are a completely separate village, and that is ruled by Newton. Other than that, we are separate. We are a protected area. There are only two entrances into Oak Hill Park. One is through Wiswall Road, and the other one is through Spires Road. and it is a sheltered area. And the residents who live here, the newcomers do feel the warmth and the caring of the other residents. We care.
What do you think you would attribute to this closeness? How do you make these people feel warm? What makes this community so tightly knit?
I think it's the fact that although our homes are small and we are comparatively close to one another, we have the option of knocking on our neighbor's door and not feeling rejected. We feel as if our neighbor will always be glad to help us. And they are.
What about your neighbors? Have the majority of them been around here for a long time? I know you mentioned someone across the street was an original owner, and
Yes.
yet there are newcomers in the community.
I live on a corner. My immediate next door neighbors have lived here for approximately 11 years. They are newcomers. Directly across the roadway is another newcomer. He has lived here for approximately 8 years. Next door to him lived people who, although they are second owners, they have lived here a few years longer than I. Across the street from me live two families who are original owners, and they would no more think of moving from Oak Hill Park than I. I've always loved the neighborhood. There is a feeling of security, and I've just always loved it.
When you moved to Oak Hill Park, you moved from Boston, Brookline.
Yeah.
And did you have a car then?
We had two cars. Since my husband was a musician, he needed his car, and all roads lead from Rome. And this Rome was on top of Route 1, on top of 128, and on top of Route 9. Nothing could be more convenient. I always worked, and I had my own car.
Have you seen any changes in, like, the roadways you just mentioned, 128, Route 9? How have these grown up through the years?
More congestion. And Dedham Street has become almost impossible. It takes at least during the rush hours in the morning and in the evening, it takes about 10 minutes to get out of Spires Road, which is because of the oncoming traffic in both directions.
To get back to the community, what kind of community government is there in Oak Hill Park?
We have a small civic organization called the Oak Hill Park Association, and we meet once a month, and we are the watchdogs. We watch the area and make sure that everything is going well.
How many people would you say are active in the community affairs of Oak Hill Park?
That's a difficult question.
Would it be the majority?
In a moment of crisis, then everyone in the park becomes active, all 650 families. Normally, they're only about the Oak Hill Park Association board who one could consider our active.
What would you deem a crisis?
We recently, I think a couple of years ago, had quite a crisis. Mount Ida College was thinking of leasing their land to the life care facility. And this life care facility was about to build a hospital and living quarters for senior citizens. It caused quite a furor because we could not picture how there could be such an influx of more traffic up and down Dedham Street, and the fact that we would have these enormous structures overshadowing the residents of Oak Hill Park. We once more were about to have another crisis because Mount Ida College is joining forces with Chamberlain Junior College, and we are not looking forward to, or we are not anticipating the amount of traffic that may be caused by this merger.
What other issues are important to Oak Hill Park?
We own a tract of land, 3 acres of land in between Oak Hill Park and the industrial area on Wells Avenue. This is very important because this is a barrier there and keeps our area private, and we are assured that we will not have any industry crawling in on our territory.
I want to get into a little bit more of your personal life, and
I don't have any personal life.
starting with, where were your parents from?
My father came from the Ukraine, from a small city called Zaslav on the border of the Ukraine and Poland. He had a very famous cousin whose name was Maurice Schwartz on the Jewish stage. And I understand that this Maurice Schwartz was great. My mother came from Lithuania, and also from the border of Lithuania and Poland. And my mother was the forelady of a shirt factory in the North End. This was before there was a women's lib, but there was nobody more independent than Dora Mabel.
So your mother worked in a shirt factory, and your father did what?
My father was an upholsterer. He would be up very early in the morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, would make his own breakfast, would then take a streetcar from Dorchester to Hyde Park, open up the factory, and then he would start cutting the upholstering material and would be there until late. He would usually not return home until 8 o'clock at night. He had quite a hard job.
So you grew up in what area of Boston?
I grew up in Dorchester. I grew up in the Franklin Park area. Yes.
How would you get to Boston from there? You said your father took the train?
Streetcar.
The streetcar?
Yes. I lived on McClellan Street, which was right off Blue Hill Avenue, and our means of transportation were the streetcars. into Eggleston Square or out of Eggleston Square.
How far out of the city would these streetcars go?
Quite a distance. Because I would take, I also had worked for my father in Hyde Park, and I would take the streetcar down to Mattapan Square and would then take a public bus to Hyde Park. So there was quite a network of transportation.
If you had moved to Oak Hill Park without a car, what kind of transportation was accessible?
Would have been tracked. There was bus service, but it was not that good. And if without a car, I feel that we would have been trapped. You needed your own transportation.
What was Dorchester like growing up for you? You had an older brother?
I had an older brother and a younger sister. Dorchester. Well, I used to, since my sister is considerably younger than I was the babysitter, and I would take her for walks through Franklin Park and look at the animals and things of that sort. And and of course, I had all the girlfriends and all the boyfriends who lived around. Played tennis at Franklin Field. I guess that was it.
What did you like to do most when you were a child in Dorchester?
It's very hard to say. Because
Anything out of the ordinary that children today don't do?
well, we had clubs that would meet in the evening, and I belonged to many clubs when I was a teenager. This seemed to help get over the stresses of being teenagers.
So as a teenager you socialized with boys and girls and you had dates?
Yes, yes. However, I grew up during the Depression when money was very tight, and if a boy had the use of an automobile, it would be his family's automobile, and the fact that he took you out on a date meant that one would go down a country road and you would talk about all the wonderful things in life, and you would solve every problem that there ever was on the country road. And sometimes you remembered the problems, and sometimes you ended up with more problems.
What else do you remember about the Depression? What kind of services do you remember in the area, or any kind of FDR's alphabet soup, things that he established to help the American people? Do anything like that?
Oh, the CCC. I had several boyfriends that belonged to the CCC, and they were away a good part of the summer in helping build our forests. I also had a few girlfriends who worked under the CCC as secretaries. I was much more independent, and I worked for an insurance broker at that time. One girl office. sheep cook and bottle wash.
What else do you remember about the Depression that affected you personally, maybe things that you had to skimp on? Or
I don't remember skimping on anything. I think that, as a matter of fact, I don't even know what the word skimp meant in those days, because we did with whatever we had. And we did not seem to want for more things than we did have. We always had food on the table, and matter of fact, I was about 40 pounds heavier than I am now, so we had to have plenty of food on the table. I was never hungry. No, there was no skimping.
what kind of advice did your parents give you during that time, or anything that's affected you now? Anything they might have said, or anything that they...
Everything that my mother ever said to me, if I can remember all of it, does affect me now. My mother was a very smart woman who had lived a long time and was anxious that her children be happy. My father just loved his children, and so we grew up with love and a great deal of knowledge.
And after the Depression, you entered into the war.
Yes. That war is the war that would have interrupted my life more than anything else. I was married, I'm 42, and my husband did two things that he was afraid of. He enlisted in the army, and he asked me to marry him. And we were married within 3 days of his asking. At that time, I worked on School Street in Boston, and he came in one day and said, let's go across the street, which at that time was the old City Hall, and get the license. So we did. And then we found out that David came from Brookline and I came from Boston, and that required another license. So we went to Brookline and got another license. And because he had enlisted and didn't know when he would be called into the active army, we got a waiver. And we were married within 3 days of getting the license. We were married in my mother's house, and there was quite a crowd.
When David went to war, what kind of work did you do during the war?
Oh, unfortunately or fortunately, I have always been a secretary. So I worked as a secretary in private industry. David, meantime, was in the 7th General Hospital, and he was in charge of the X-ray department. They were located in Lincolnshire, England.
How long did you stay at this particular job?
At the job with the insurance broker, I stayed for 5 years.
And then you changed, you switched jobs?
Then I changed jobs. I was making the enormous amount of $15 a week.
What year was this?
This would have been 1942, 43. And my friends were making more money. And I did get a job that would pay me $18 a week. And so I left for bigger and better things.
Which was what?
I was only there for a short time. It was working for Eli Whitney, to open up their sales office in New England. I worked for a very nice man whose name was Raleigh. And it was just a short time.
And how many jobs then did you have in the course of the war?
I can't remember.
Did you work any war effort jobs?
No, I didn't. I had wanted to get into the war effort jobs for two reasons. First, because I am extremely patriotic. And secondly, because the money was so much better.
Okay. When David came back from the war, then you continued to work.
Yes. When David returned, we decided that I would work until we had a family. Unfortunately, no family. So I continued to work. Since I graduated secretarial school in 1937, I think that I am one of the longest lived secretaries that have graduated from Boston Clerical School. That would now be 50 years.
Where did you start your education?
In Boston, at the William E. Endicott School. I loved my kindergarten teacher. Her name was Filene. And I adored my first grade teacher. Her name was Miss Murray. And I always thought of her as looking like that movie star, Mae Murray.
And then you went on to high school?
And then from there, I went on to, that was kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. And then I went to the Sarah Greenwood School for the 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. Then I went to Girls Latin School and transferred from Girls Latin School to Roxbury Memorial High School for Girls, and from there to Boston Clerical. So I have been educated by the Boston school system.
And then you later continued your education?
Yes, I have continued my education by taking courses at Boston College, Boston University, etc.
What do you think of the quality of life today? Is it different from what it used to be? Is it better or worse?
I think that it's much faster paced than it was when I was young. There were so much less to do, that life was slower. Now it's a rush system.
If you could go back and do everything all over again, would you change anything?
I probably would still do the same thing. There would be, no, I guess I would do the same thing.
If you were to say there was one person that influenced you greatly in your life, who would that be?
My mother, yes. My mother, who was so wise.
It's easy to see now.
Yes, it is, and also my husband, who was extremely wise.
What about an experience that influenced you the most? Had a great impact on you?
I think all my experiences have had an impact. I've gained by all of them.
How would you describe a typical day in Oak Hill Park when you first moved in, after you'd settled in and everything?
That's difficult because I worked, and so I would leave the house at about 8 or 8:30 in the morning, and then I would rush home and get things moving, try to make the supper, do a little bit of gardening. That was my life. I couldn't tell you what the neighbors' lives were like.
What did you do for leisure activity in your spare time?
I don't think I ever had any leisure.
What about now? How do you see your life as having evolved up to this point?
How has my life evolved? I think right now I'm busier than I've ever been, and I always thought that I was fairly busy. It seems as if time is rushing by me, and I'm trying to catch up with it. So I'm rushing along with it.
But you're happy, you're busy, you're keeping busy, you're doing things for the community.
Try to, yes. I enjoy people, and as I have said, I love the neighborhood I live in, and I love my neighbors.
And so the move to Oak Hill Park was a good one.
A very, very. My husband had loved it here, and I feel that even though he died 3 years ago, his spirit is still
here. How has your life been different since he died?
That's, again, rather difficult, because the last 12 years of David's life, he was ill. And I had retired, and I took care of David. So now I work part-time and work for the community part-time. And so our life has been completely different.
He was a musician, so he traveled a lot, and
Yes. He was gone a great deal at night. He played at Boston Gardens and would play at various shows, would play weddings and bar mitzvahs and etc. Yes. Boston's best jazz man. Yeah.
do you have any closing remarks you'd like to
No.
share with us?
No, I don't know what closing remark, but except to say that I have enjoyed my life in Oak Hill Park, and I expect to enjoy living here even longer.
Thank you.
Thank you.